Okay, so we're going to go over the questions that you had yesterday, and you're practicing um, 3 and 4, your strategies, using your answers that you did yesterday. Okay, so I gave you the questions now that have the multiple choice. Yesterday, you answered them on your own first. Okay, so which best describes how forces must interact with for a sailboat to change direction against water current? Okay, we talked about how it's going to need unbalanced forces. The force behind the boat must be stronger than the current in order for it to change directions against the current. Okay, so now, the first one says the force of the person steering must be greater than the force of the water current. Well, it says greater than the force of the water current, and if you're not reading carefully, you might mark that one correct because it has part of it right. But the person steering the boat, like when you're behind, let's see, a car, you guys would know more of. So if you're in a car and your adult is driving the car, steering it, are they the force that's moving the car? No, they're the force that pushes on that pedal. But what happens when they push on the pedal is the force that moves the car. So the person steering it does not need to have a greater force than the water current because the person steering it doesn't matter. Okay. The force of the wind must be greater than the force of the water current. Well, in our question, it says that it's a sailboat. Well, a sailboat, where do they get their force from? They get it from the wind. So that one could be correct. So we're going to let it stay there. The force of the wind must be equal to the force of the water current. Well, if they're both forces that are equal, then they're balanced, right? And that's what makes it wrong because you don't want a balanced force, you need an unbalanced. The force of the wind must be less than the force of the water current. That's saying that the wind must be pushing not as hard as the water current. Well, would they be able to move against the current and change direction? No, they wouldn't because they would go right along with the current. So the best answer is B. The force of the wind must be greater than the force of the water current. And it does fit what we said here. The force behind the boat stronger than the current. Because it's a sailboat, it needs wind. Okay. 2 cars, a heavier car and a lighter car, are pushed with equal force. And the effect, and are affected by the same amount of friction. Which best describes the effect on the distance the cars will move? Okay, so we talked about it, that the heavier car won't go as far as the lighter one. So the lighter car will travel longer distance because it has more mass. Wait a minute. So the lighter car will travel longer distance. Is that true? That it's going to go far? Yes, but is it true that it has more mass? Ooh, again, they're trying to trick you where half of it's right and half of it's wrong. No, if it's a lighter car, remember our weight depends on the mass of our bodies. If we have a larger mass, we'll have a greater weight. If we have a less amount of mass, we're going to be lighter in weight because the pull of gravity on us to the earth is what causes us to have weight. So the more, and we have more pull, the greater mass we are. Okay, so the heavier car will travel shorter distance because it has more mass. Is that true? The heavier car will travel a shorter distance. Okay, we agreed with that because we said the lighter one will go farther because it has more mass. Yeah, and the heavier one does have more mass. So both parts of that right. So we'll let it be. The lighter car will travel a shorter distance because its wheels will roll more quickly. Did we say anything over here about its wheels? No. The heavier car will travel a longer distance because its wheels, we didn't say anything about wheels. And would the heavier car move a longer distance? No. Okay, so we're going to reread the one that we think is right. The heavier car will travel a shorter distance because it has more mass. That is correct. Okay, so the last strategy is to check over your answer. Reread the question and the answer choice that you think is correct and make sure it makes sense. Which best describes how forces must interact for a sailboat to change direction against the water current? The force of the wind, which is what powers the sailboat, must be greater than the force of the water current. True, I still agree with that one. Two cars, a heavier car and a lighter car, are pushed with equal force and are affected by the same amount of friction. Which best describes the effect on the distance the cars will move? The heavier car will travel a shorter distance because it has more mass. And that is true also, and I still agree with it. So that is checking over your answers. All right. Go on to today's lesson.